Microphone check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Good morning and welcome everyone. The Subcommittee on Higher Education and Workforce Investment will come to order. We're happy that you're here. I note that a quorum is present. I also want to ask unanimous consent that Ms. Wild of Pennsylvania and Ms. Hayes of Connecticut be permitted to participate in today's hearing with the understanding that their questions will come after all members have completed their questions. The committee is meeting today in a legislative hearing to hear testimony on engines of economic mobility, the critical role of community colleges, historically Black colleges and universities, and minority-serving institutions in preparing students for success. Pursuant to Committee Rule 7C, opening statements are limited to the chair and the ranking member, and this allows us to hear from our witnesses sooner and provides all members with adequate time to ask questions. I recognize myself now for the purpose of making an opening statement. Today, we will examine the critical role of historically Black colleges and universities, HBCUs, tribal colleges and universities, Hispanic-serving institutions, and community colleges in providing low-income students and students of color with a quality higher education. Our first three bipartisan hearings have so clearly demonstrated that a college degree remains the surest path to financial stability for Americans across the country. This is particularly true for low-income students and students of color whose educational and workforce opportunities have historically been limited by intergenerational poverty and systemic racism. In fact, studies show that students with parents in the bottom quintile of the income distribution can double their chances of moving up the income ladder if they obtain a degree. However, federal data released this morning on college enrollment reveals a 50 percentage point gap between low-income students and their wealthy peers. We have much work to do. HBCUs, tribal colleges and universities, Hispanic-serving institutions, and community colleges continue to do this work and demonstrate their commitment and ability to provide these students with the benefits that come with a quality education. Founded for the specific purpose of educating Black students because other institutions would not, HBCUs continue to live up to their mission of providing a community where Black students can thrive. HBCUs make up less than 3% of colleges and universities, yet they produce almost 20% of all Black graduates. Tribal colleges and universities, TCUs, were developed as part of a political and social movement to regain tribal autonomy and to combat centuries of forced assimilation and destruction of Native communities. Today, there are 35 accredited TCUs serving students from more than 230 federally registered tribes. Hispanic-serving institutions educate more than 3 out of 5 undergraduate Latino students and 1/4 of all undergraduate students. Among four-year institutions, Hispanic-serving institutions propel low-income students to top income brackets at a rate three times that of predominantly white institutions. Hispanic-serving institutions can also act as cultural hubs for Latino students, many of whom earn their degree and return to work in their own communities. These institutions are effective engines of economic mobility because they meet students where they are and are dedicated to educating the whole person. HBCUs and TCUs in particular embed appreciation for the identity and culture of the students they serve in their foundational missions, honoring ancestors, sustaining traditions, and engaging honestly with American history all serve to signal to students that they belong in college. Many other institutions, such as Asian American and Native American Pacific Islander serving institutions and predominantly Black institutions, also serve low-income students and students of color. These institutions are forced to do more with less. To be designated as a minority-serving institution, colleges must not only enroll a substantial number of students of color, but it must also enroll a substantial number of Pell students and have fewer resources than peer institutions. In my own state, the California State University system is a model for how minority-serving institutions can help students overcome barriers to higher education. Reflecting the population of the state, more than half of CSU students are people of color. 1 in 3 students are the first in their family to attend college, and more than half of all students receive Pell Grants. Community college also play a crucial role in providing higher education to low-income students and students of color. These 2-year colleges often provide a local and affordable option for students who are priced out of 4-year institutions. In fact, community colleges enroll 1 in 3 Black students and nearly half of Latino, Asian American, and Pacific Islander and first-generation students. More than a third of low-income students attend community colleges. The great work being done across the country by HBCUs, TCUs, minority-serving institutions, and community colleges is unfortunately hampered by deeply inadequate funding. The persistent and systemic underfunding of HBCUs has been extensively documented. The federal government has never fully fulfilled its obligation to support Native students at TCUs. And less than half of designated HSIs have received a grant through HSI-specific programs. And the average community college receives about half the amount of per-student funding received by public 4-year colleges. With this funding inequity, we must ask ourselves, how are these institutions still producing such strong results? How is that? As our witnesses will highlight, when we invest in HBCUs, in tribal colleges and universities, Hispanic-serving institutions, and community colleges, we empower hundreds of thousands of students each year with the most powerful tool available to achieve success, a college degree. And lastly, as we honor the 65th anniversary of Brown v. Board and wrestle with the promise unfulfilled, it becomes evident that just like our K-12 system, we spend more money to educate wealthy college students than students who are underserved by our education system. Depriving the institutions that serve our most vulnerable college students of the resources made available to predominantly white 4-year universities is contrary to our values and the best interest as a nation. Congress has a responsibility to strengthen and invest in institutions that are promoting economic mobility. As we continue to work toward a reauthorization of key federal higher education policy, we must understand the critical work these institutions are doing to address the specific needs of today's students and invest in these initiatives. Thank you, President Verret, to Dr. McHatton, Chancellor Dubois, and President Boham for being with us today. I now yield to the ranking member, Mr. Smucker, for his opening statement.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for yielding. We're all here today because we believe that every American should have the opportunity to pursue post-secondary education. And we know doors are opened by a college degree, and we understand the importance of making this kind of opportunity achievable for everyone in our country. Higher education can help set individuals on the right path to achieve the American dream. And while it's not the only pathway to a high-quality, family-sustaining job, it provides many with the opportunity to get their foot in the door to a lifelong career. As a result of the economic policies that we put in place, the good news is today's graduates are entering a booming job market. We have over 7 million job openings and only 6.7 million unemployed. So I'm very proud of the opportunities our economic growth will create for the next generation, and believe that if we give students access, those who are willing to work hard, make good decisions, have an excellent opportunity to succeed. That access is a critical piece of the pie. Higher education should be accessible and attainable regardless of circumstance, which is why the federal government has made it a clear priority to ensure that low-income and first-generation students have the tools that they need to prepare for post-secondary education commitments and manage the costs associated with earning a degree. As we continue to consider what must be done in any reauthorization of the Higher Education Act, we have the opportunity to ensure that restructuring and innovation in our higher education system provides all students that access to opportunities that offer those pathways to success, both inside and outside of the conventional classroom. That could mean alternative pathways to a four-year degree, such as offering programs to teach in-demand skills so that students can take only the courses they need to do their jobs, dual enrollment pathways, and opportunities later in life to reskill. For any of these changes to take place, we must recognize that the dollars, the money, is an important part of the conversation, and institutions need to be willing to take responsibility for the outcomes of their students. Stories like one from this weekend, where a billionaire gifted an entire graduating class with paying off their student debt, are great examples of one person's capacity for excellence and generosity. But they also illustrate something that's too easily forgotten, that nothing is free and someone always pays the price. This means that Congress and other institutions need to step up to the plate, do all that we can, respectively, to make higher education an investment that doesn't cost more than it reaps. And that's true for students and for taxpayers who are investing. In the Promoting Real Opportunity, Success, and Prosperity Through Education Reform, the PROSPER Act, that was a comprehensive proposal to reauthorize the HEA in the last Congress, Republicans included reforms that allowed students greater access to federal student aid, promoted earn and learn programs, increased flexibility in spending institutional aid, and reformed the federal work-study program to better prepare students for future employment in their chosen fields. These bold ideas for affordable and accessible post-secondary education recognize that for too long, the federal government has complied with a myopic view of what post-secondary education is and why people pursue any kind of higher education. We must recognize that post-secondary education needs to work for students and not the other way around. This committee should continue to consider these reforms top priorities as it discusses policy changes that could be included in the reauthorization of the HEA. We need to be striving on both sides of the aisle for new ideas that will increase opportunities for all American students, regardless of circumstance, and support their efforts to succeed and prosper. With that, I yield back.
Thank you. Without objection, all other members who wish to insert written statements into the record may do so by submitting them to the committee clerk electronically in Microsoft Word by 5 p.m. on June 4th. And I'll now introduce our witnesses. Again, thank you all very much for being here. Dr. Reynold Verret is the 6th president and second lay leader of Xavier University of Louisiana, a private Catholic liberal arts historically black college and university. Before his presidency in 2015, Dr. Verret served as provost at Savannah State University and Wilkes University. Dr. Verret received his undergraduate degree cum laude in biochemistry from Columbia University and a PhD in biochemistry from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Dr. Patricia McHatton is the Executive Vice President for Academic Affairs, Student Success, and P16 Integration at the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley, a Hispanic-serving institution. Dr. McHatton has served in a variety of leadership positions, including Dean of the College of Education, Department Chair, and Associate Dean for Teacher Preparation. She earned a PhD from the University of South Florida in Curriculum and Instruction with an emphasis in special education and urban education. Dr. Glenn Dubois is now the longest-serving chancellor in the history of Virginia's community colleges, hired in 2001. Since then, he has led the system of 23 colleges and 40 campuses through 2 successful strategic plans and a third called Complete 2021, which aspires to triple the number of credentials that colleges put into Virginia's economy. Dubois earned his PhD in higher education administration, research, and policy from the University of Massachusetts. He holds a master's degree from Eastern Kentucky University, a bachelor's degree from Florida Atlantic University, and an associate of science degree from the State University of New York in Farmingdale. Dr. Sandra Bohan is the president of Salish Kootenai College, a tribal college and university at TCU located in Montana after serving as Vice President of Academic Affairs. She has more than 2 decades of experience working in higher education, both in Montana and California. Dr. Bohan is an enrolled member of the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes of the Flathead Indian Reservation. She earned her Doctorate of Education in Educational Leadership from the University of Montana, holds a Master's of Education from Montana State University, and a Bachelor of Arts in Sociology from the University of Montana. Again, welcome to you all. We appreciate all the witnesses from being here, for you all being here, and I certainly look forward to your testimony. I just wanted to remind you that we have read your written statements, and they will appear in full in the hearing record. Pursuant to Committee Rule 7D and community practice, each of you is asked to limit your oral presentation to a 5-minute summary of your written statement. I also wanted to remind you that pursuant to Title 18 of the U.S. Code, Section 1001, it is illegal to knowingly and willfully falsify any statement, representation, writing, document, or material fact presented to Congress or otherwise conceal or cover up a material fact. Before you begin your testimony, please remember to press the button on the microphone in front of you so that it will turn on and we all can hear you. As you begin to speak, the light in front of you will turn green, and after 4 minutes, the light will turn yellow to signal you have 1 remaining minute. And when the light turns red, your 5 minutes have expired, and we will ask you to please wrap up. We will let the entire panel make their presentations before we move to member questions, and when answering a question, please remember to once again turn your microphone on. First to recognize is Dr. Verret. Thank you.
Thank you. Subcommittee Chairwoman Susan Davis, Ranking Member Lloyd Smucker, and member of the subcommittee, thank you for this opportunity to address you. My name is Reynolds Verret. I serve as the 6th president of Xavier University of Louisiana. It was founded by St. Catherine Drexel and the Sisters of the Blessed Sacrament. My institution is Catholic and also an HBCU, historically black college. The ultimate purpose of Xavier is to contribute to the promotion of the just and humane society. This preparation takes place in diverse learning environments that incorporate all relevant learning means, including research experiences and community service. I was asked to testify before the subcommittee today on the institution as an engine of economic mobility and the programs that demonstrate this at the institution, how these programs prepare students for careers, and a brief history of HBCUs, why they are created, why they are important. HBCUs were created as early as 1837 to provide African Americans access to higher education, noted for their contributions to educating black, low-income, and educationally disadvantaged Americans. The 101 HBCUs today constitute the class of institutions that satisfies the statutory requirements and definition for HBCUs as defined by the Higher Education Act 1965. In my home state of Louisiana, according to an economic impact study by the UNCF, the United Negro College Fund, the impact of the 6 HBCUs in the state on our regional economy, an employment impact of 8,454 jobs, a total economic impact of $923 million, and a lifetime earning of $9.4 billion. For Xavier specifically, the regional impact of our institution is an output impact of $200 million in our region, a value-added impact of $135 million, a labor income impact of $95 million, and an employment impact of 1,715 jobs. Xavier is considered to be one of the best value schools in the nation for quality education, according to the U.S. News and World Report. However, as our students come closer to realizing their dreams of higher education, the more expensive these goals become. Tuition at Xavier is $22,503 per year. This is considerably lower than its peer institutions. More than 93% of Xavier undergraduates qualify for need-based or other forms of financial aid, and more than 65% receive federal Pell Grants. We are grateful for your bipartisan support and forgiveness of the HBCU Hurricane Katrina supplemental loan that helped us recover from the disaster. Xavier leads in preparing African-American physicians in the nation and also sending African-American PhDs in the sciences. At Xavier, we're innovating our programs and preparing our students for the workforce, and a changing workforce. We are launching 14 new high-quality programs, including a BS in neuroscience, and the only physician's assistance program, master's program in the state of Louisiana, and a PhD in education. We believe that all children deserve great teachers, and thus we're also engaged in preparing highly qualified teachers for our primary and secondary schools. The expansion of our program offerings over the past 3 years allows Xavier to meet the evolving needs of students, to be globally competitive, and to meet the talent needs of our regional and national workforce. Xavier's Student Academic Success Office provides the resources and support systems to assist all students in being successful. A UNCF Lilly Foundation grant has allowed us to focus on creating career pathways, and our faculty embrace a culture of successful students that is a tradition at Xavier. I'm happy that the fiscal year 2020 Labor HHS appropriation bill includes much-needed increase in funding for HBCUs and hopes its passage through the House and Senate will ultimately follow. Title III Parts B through F remain important programs for HBCUs, for the HBCU community, and should be fully funded. Senators Doug Jones and Tim Scott and Representatives Alma Adams and Mark Walker recently introduced the Future Act, a bipartisan, bicameral piece of legislation. This bill extends the mandatory funding of Title III Part F for HBCUs of $85 million for STEM initiatives until 2021. It is my hope that Congress passes this bill before the stream of funding expires in September 30th, 2019. I must say to you, the nation has need of the ability, creativity, and ingenuity of the students we educate in order to prosper and compete globally. Your continued investment in them secures all of our futures. I want to thank you, and if you want more, my written testimony has been submitted. Please review it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dr. Manhattan. Good morning, Chairwoman Davis, Ranking Member Smucker, and honorable committee members. I'm Patricia Alvarez McHatton, Executive Vice President of Academic Affairs, Student Success, and P16 Integration at the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley. I'm grateful for the opportunity to address you today and want to especially thank you for giving me an ability to share some of the wonderful work that's happening at the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley. We're a distributed campus spanning approximately 120 miles along the U.S.-Mexico border, all the way from Brownsville to Rio Grande City. Our fall 2018 enrollment was over 28,000 students. We graduate over 5,000 students each year. 87% of our students are Hispanic, 59% are first generation, 76% of all undergraduate students receive some form of financial aid, and 81% of undergraduate students receiving financial aid are Pell Grant eligible. Most importantly, our students are committed to their education and to giving back to their community. The work we do is guided by 5 priorities with student success at its core. We ensure student success by providing educational opportunities, engaging in research that impacts the Rio Grande Valley and beyond, expanding healthcare and medical education, which is essential given that we are a medically underserved community with some of the highest rates of diabetes in the nation, and collaborating with our community as true partners in our work. Our tuition is capped at 12 credit hours, which means students do not pay for any courses above the 12 credit hours. Not only are they graduating in a timely manner, but they're doing so with less debt. Our Promise program exemplifies our commitment to ensuring our students graduate in 4 years. As part of the program, students take part in targeted career development opportunities, high-impact practices, meet with mentors on a regular basis, and complete 15 hours a semester or 30 hours in a calendar year. But getting them graduated is insufficient. We need to make sure that once they graduate, they enter viable careers that address community needs. To do so, we work in tandem with employers, educators, workforce systems, and communities to ensure our current and future workforce needs are met. First, we believe that teaching is the foundation of all professions. Therefore, we have a responsibility to prepare teachers who understand not just content and pedagogy, but also the applicability of what is learned to real-world environments. We strive to ensure that our faculty are representative of our student population because it is important for our students to see individuals who look like them and sound like them in a variety of positions, and we have benefited from federal funding to support initiatives that attract underrepresented faculty in our institution and help build capacity within our faculty. So how do we work with our stakeholders to ensure we have the right programs and opportunities for our students? We have representatives on Economic Development Center and chamber boards throughout the Valley. Recently, at the request of Stark County's EDC, we conducted an analysis to determine which industries are growing and expected to grow in the county, and we're aligning educational programs to meet that workforce need. We systematically bring stakeholders together to share cultural perspectives, talents, challenges, and opportunities, and through this process, communities are empowered to provide input into university policies, curriculum, research, and initiatives. We offer opportunity for K-12 learners to take part in summer camp that inspires them to enter STEM fields and high-tech jobs and provide high school students opportunities to partner with faculty in research endeavors. We offer research and development support to local industries. The Center for Advanced Radio Astronomy and Stargate both support the development of future leaders in space exploration, commercial space industry, and related technology development, which is especially important now that SpaceX has moved into the RGV. And it isn't just the STEM fields that we focus on. The College of Fine Arts has a relationship with the Rio Grande State Center in Harlingen, whereby art students work directly with patients as part of the rehabilitation. We're in the process of launching our PhD program in clinical psychology, which has a focus on Hispanic mental health, and this is but one of many other programs that we are launching. In collaboration with nonprofits, governmental support organizations, and the business community, we support entrepreneurial activity innovations through our Weslaco Regional Commercialization and Innovation Center and NSF I-Core Teams program. The School of Medicine continues its mission to close gaps in healthcare and expand educational opportunities for its students. The South Texas Diabetes and Obesity Institute, the Institute of Neuroscience, and the RGV Alzheimer's Center are engaged in research to address health disparities in the region. In closing, I want to point out that HSIs provide Hispanics the greatest access to college education. They represent over 15% of all higher ed institutions, yet serve 66% of Hispanic undergraduates. In 2016, HSIs awarded 56% of all degrees to Hispanic students and are at the forefront to increase educational access and success for the nation's Hispanic. I thank you for this opportunity to share the work being undertaken at UTRGV and stand ready to work with you in ensuring all students are ready for success.
Thank you. Dr. Dubois.
Chairwoman Davis, Ranking Member Smucker, members of the committee, good morning. The fact that I'm sitting here before you today is proof positive that community colleges are indeed engines of economic opportunity. I am a community college graduate. I was the first in my family to attend college. Truth said, I was disinterested in high school, and if it were not for my mother's persistence, I would have never even considered going to a community college. Today, I'm Chancellor of the Virginia Community College System. We operate 23 colleges across 40 campuses. I'm also a founding board member of a group called Rebuilding America's Middle Class, RAMSI. It's a coalition of more than 100 community colleges focused on advancing post-secondary access and affordability. Our colleges were created to do what no one else really would do: respond to Virginia's unmet needs in higher education and workforce development. Cost and convenience are the two biggest reasons why students choose to attend a community college. We're open access. We give everyone a chance. For many, we offer a second chance. For those of limited means, demanding responsibilities, difficult schedules, we offer what might be their only chance. One example where location and access really makes a big difference is rural Virginia. Rural Virginia badly trails the rest of the state in high school graduation and college attainment. There, we have to convince families who have never before needed anything beyond high school, in some cases beyond 6th grade, to get a good job. We have to convince them to send their children to college. Our Rural Virginia Horseshoe Initiative 10-year goals include cutting in half the area's high school dropout rate and doubling its college credential completion rate. We're pursuing that through student coaching practices and helping more students finish short-term pathways that lead to employment. We also serve a huge number of students who begin at their community college with the aspirations to eventually transfer to a university and complete the bachelor's degree. In Virginia, our tuition and fees are approximately 1/3 the comparable cost at a public university. But let me be very clear. It is rare for a community college student to complete an associate degree in 2 years. And much of that has to do with life circumstances of those we serve. Simply stated, our students today are older, they're poorer, more likely to be first generation, just like I was, and they are more likely to attend class part-time, not full-time, working a full-time job or multiple part-time jobs. We also have to help more adult students earn post-secondary credentials. Careers exist today that simply didn't when these adults were 18. These opportunities offer family-sustaining wages, health care, a regular schedule, and paid time off. They don't require a bachelor's degree, but they do require skills that we offer in our short-term format. We call our short-term training programs Fast Forward. It's our fastest growing segment. These programs are more affordable, they're more realistic for adults, the schedules work for them, and most importantly, these programs fill critical business needs. In nearly 3 years, our colleges put more than 13,000 high-demand credentials into the Virginia economy. Those credentials are business verified as high demand and aimed directly at the employer challenge of finding trained and skilled employees. The ability to use Pell Grants for these short-term programs would be transformative. We could serve so many more students, unleashing an incredible engine of economic mobility. Our typical Fast Forward student has to come up with about $1,000 out of pocket on day one. Survey after survey after survey confirms that the amount, $1,000, is simply out of reach for too many American families. Pell eligibility would make all the difference. Should Pell Grants be extended to these students, I would suggest that you do so with a solid system of accountability, just like we've established in Virginia. For the same reason that the federal government invests in those pursuing traditional academic degrees, we should invest in those pursuing high-quality, stackable, post-secondary workforce credentials and boost America's community colleges as an even more powerful engine of economic mobility. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Bohan.
Madam Chair and distinguished members of the subcommittee, I'm Dr. Sandra Boham. I'm an enrolled member of the Confederated Salish and Kootenai Tribes and president of Salish Kootenai College in Pablo, Montana. I'm also a member of the board of directors of the American Indian Higher Education Consortium, and I am very honored to be here to speak with you today. Tribal colleges are place-based, mission-focused institutions. To tribal colleges and universities, economic mobility means preparing individual American Indian and Alaskan Native students for success, as well as strengthening and sustaining our tribes, tribal communities, lands, languages, and cultures. Salish Kootenai College, like all TCUs, was established for two reasons. One, the near-complete failure of the U.S. higher education system to address the needs of, or even include, American Indians and Alaskan Natives. And two, to preserve our culture, language, lands, and sovereignty. Located in some of the most impoverished, remote, and beautiful areas in the nation, tribal colleges have grown from one institution in 1968 to 37 today, operating 75 campuses in 16 states. We serve 130,000 students and community members each year, and from more than 230 federally recognized tribes. My home state of Montana has 7 tribal colleges, and about half of all American Indians enrolled in higher education in Montana attend a tribal college. Tribal colleges are accredited institutions chartered by federally recognized tribes or the federal government. All tribal colleges offer associate degrees, 16 offer bachelor's degrees, and 5 offer master's degrees, all taught from a foundation grounded in our tribe's distinctive and resilient worldviews. Today, we are facilitating economic growth and sustainability. Over the past 45 years, we've developed solid workforce programs responsive to tribal needs. Salish Kootenai College offers bachelor's degrees in forest management, hydrology, wildlife, fisheries, education, nursing, tribal governance, and tribal historic preservation. We are aggressively working to sustain our tribal languages because language, culture, and community are essential to Native student success and completion. At SKC, we developed a Salish language teacher apprenticeship program that includes a year-long immersion in Salish language. We focus on the adults because they are essential to teaching our language. For us, the situation is critical. Just a few years ago, the number of fluent Salish speakers fell to 18. Our goal is to educate 40 Salish language teachers who will give our children a clear path, clear vision of the world as a Salish person and set them on a good path. The program is also a path to economic mobility. In the first few years, every student who completed the program was hired in the local schools. This program demonstrates a synergistic dual nature of economic mobility in Native people. Academic success is important. Equally important to us is to strengthen our community and perpetuate our culture. These twin missions, individual and community, are inseparable. We cannot fail at either without putting the other at risk. A more obvious contributor to the economic mobility is the availability of jobs. Through a multi-year partnership with the Department of Energy, Tribes and Industries, Salish Kootenai College, and 4 other TCUs are establishing advanced engineering skills to operate digital manufacturing equipment. Salish Kootenai College partnered with Northrop Grumman, the United States Air Force, Salish S&K Technologies, and the college to in a mentor-protege program to help us create the workforce and develop economic opportunities through that program. As new jobs are created, the tribal colleges will educate students to fill those positions. One of the ways we've created job creation is that we need a pipeline of skilled workers. Because our high school dropout rates are too high, and many students were enrolling at SKC unprepared for college STEM courses, we developed dual credit. But that wasn't enough. So we recently opened a STEM academy for high school juniors and seniors. Students take classes at their own high school in the morning, come to Salish Kootenai College in the afternoon to complete their science and math courses, and then they are ready to enter STEM programs and have doorways open for opportunities that they might not have had before. The Academy is already, in its second year of existence, demonstrating success. Through strategies like this, tribal colleges are transforming Native America and Indian country one student at a time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you all for helping us by being within the time limits. We appreciate it. If I could, under committee rule, I'm going to move now to questioning of witnesses under our 5-minute rule, and I will be followed by the ranking member, and then we'll alternate between the parties. If I could start with you, Dr. Boham, you've spent more than 2 decades working with tribal communities and excuse me, in higher education in Montana and in my home state of California. And I know that that includes working with adults who are trying to finish their GED and with upward bound programs to improve college access. So I wonder if you could just share with us a little more, really on the personal level, how your experience working in different facets of higher education and in different tribal communities influenced your approach to your role as president of Salish Kootenai College. What really mattered?
Thank you, Madam Chair. What really matters is opportunity and assisting students to believe that they can, in fact, accomplish anything that they set their minds to accomplish. What we know is that having a and we know this through recent research and studies, tribally, we've known it for a long time, but only recently has there been research done in the area. But we know that self-efficacy is a key piece in whether students will be successful. More than GPAs, more than high school graduation or predictive tests of entrance exams, if the student is committed and believes that they can accomplish their goal with support, they can. We also know that a strong sense of who you are, and in our case, that's around your tribal identity, is also key to having students be successful in college, in high school, and in the workforce. So we know that that base connection to your culture, at whatever level that is, language, dance, song, skills, it creates what we call predictive resiliency and protective factors that help students to navigate through difficult times.
Thank you. And does that come from individuals, from teachers, professors, et cetera, or are there actually community members who help contribute to that as well?
It comes from all of those things.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you very much. Dr. Excuse me, McHatton. As we know, universities are cultural hubs, and they are centers for the community as well. And people want to be there. They want to experience the university in the community setting. I certainly know that's true for CSUs. And I'm wondering how the University of Texas Rio Grande Valley ensures that the local community is included in campus efforts to identify and address local needs, including the demand for an educated workforce. How do they find their way to really having a meaningful impact on that process?
Great, thank you so much. We have a variety of initiatives in which we strive to bring our community into our environment. One of the things that we've done is we've tried to change the environment so it becomes a family-friendly environment. And that means that our families feel comfortable coming onto our campus, spending time and engaging in conversation. An important initiative that we've done as a result of funding from NSF is to provide culturally responsive professional development for our faculty in tandem with community members, and together they redesign the syllabi in order to utilize the culture and heritage and assets of the community as an entree into the content. In addition to that, our Community Engagement and Economic Development Center also has opportunities for our community to come together and have conversations. The outreach that we do with economic development centers, in which we have individuals participate in their boards and those types of things, also provide important information for us to be able to think about what are the programs that we should be offering.
Sounds like what you're also doing is sustaining that effort with the community, which I think is really important, and always looking for ways to do that, because sometimes people burn out, right? How do you keep them engaged? I mean, what?
Well, I have to tell you, what we find in our community is that there is so much strength and commitment to our students and to the education, because they know what a difference that's going to make, not just for the individual, but for the family and also for our region. They give willingly. It's just absolutely amazing. One example is we have a common area in the College of Education. We had a group of community organization individuals that came and completely built a brand new garden in that area. So we find opportunities for them to come and take part.
Thank you very much. I want to turn now to the ranking member or his designate for the purpose of questioning the witnesses. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dubois. Interested in your comments in regards to expanding the Pell Grant funds for shorter-term workforce programs. As you know, currently, the requirements, programs must be at least 1,600 or 600 hours in length and need to be taught over a span of 15 weeks. You mentioned Fast ForWord. How many weeks do most of your Fast ForWord programs last?
Thank you for the question. They last typically 6 weeks, some a little longer, some a little less. We have completion rates north of 90%. We have job placement rates similar. And we're seeing, and looking on a look back, we can see earnings increasing anywhere from 20 to 50%. And 20% of the students that we put through these programs in the last 3 years, before they came to us, they were on public assistance, and now they're not. So these are short-term opportunities that lead to jobs that employers are really screaming about. Think welding, pharmacy technicians, CDLs. Increasingly, these jobs require certifications and licenses.
Great results. What would you recommend as we consider changes to the policy? How many hours do you recommend that we set for minimum time eligibility requirement?
6 weeks or 150 hours.
6 weeks, 150 hours?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Dr. Verret, I'd like to learn a little bit more about your Student Academic Success Office. What types of career pathways have you created through the office? Your microphone, yeah.
First of all, we have a great depth in the STEM and the pre-professional health areas. We educate more African Americans than any university in the country who go on to become MDs. We send more African Americans into doctoral programs in advanced science and advanced studies in the sciences. But also we have students who enter the law, social services, teaching professions as well. The Career Pathways program is to allow students, because we are a liberal arts and sciences institution, to enable students to understand the plasticity of their degrees. Because very often students who are coming into history or English also have a pathway to medical school if they wish to, because there is a need for those. Likewise, our chemists become attorneys and also may go into policy fields as well, for them to understand much more broadly what their fields are. We are also speaking with our chambers of commerce and also the workforce as to what are the professions that are needed. For example, data science, which is reimagining what we traditionally teach in computer science for the emerging industries such as DEX is coming to our region, to actually think of what majors, data science.
I guess those discussions with the chamber are leading to a better transition to
Yes,
jobs after graduation?
because we're thinking of what those workforce needs are. But also, we also know that many jobs that will be emerging in the next 5 to 10 years, we can't fully envision. So it's also educating them to be flexible, to have habits of mind, to think critically and in depth, to be able to form their careers rather than just think of their next jobs, because we are in a changing workforce at this time.
How are you integrating that career-focused curriculum into dual enrollment programs?
We have dual enrollment programs with some of the high schools in our region that send students to us. And some of those students matriculate to Xavier, some of them go to other campuses as well. We also have summer programs of longstanding in the sciences, in language arts, which bring a number of students during our summers. Some of them come to our university, many of them go to other colleges. That has been part of our mission.
Are you finding some of those dual enrollment programs help students to make choices that will lead to the careers that they're interested in?
It's important to catch the imagination of young people early in their lives and catch their passions as well, so that they do not choose and drift away. Because one of the struggles for our populations as well is understanding that there is a pathway to higher ed. For many of our students who are first generation, there is no one who can actually helps them navigate. We have to show them one of the paths that this is possible, and we are engaged in doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Takano.
Thank you, Chairwoman Davis, for holding this important hearing on the role of community colleges and minority-serving institutions. A report by Harvard economist Raj Chetty found that the income and economic mobility of low-income students increases when they attend minority-serving institutions. Providing proper resources and funding to MSIs is critical to ensuring success and income mobility for low-income students. Now, I have 2 letters from students about the Asian American and Native American Pacific Islander Serving Institution programs, or ANAPISI. One student attends Irvine Valley College in California and notes that, quote, "It was not until my time at Irvine Valley College I was able, finally, in a space where I saw others that looked like me, met others who understood me, and really got to embrace my Asian American identity." The other letter is from a student attending Highline College in Des Moines, Washington, and she wrote, "The ANAPISI program has shown me that I am not alone on this journey, and I refuse to believe in the saying that, quote, college is not for everyone, unquote, because I proved to myself that it's possible." This reinforces the critical role that minority-serving institutions like Anna-Pizzi's have on the growth and success of students once they have a sense of belonging. And Madam Chairwoman, I would ask that these letters be entered into the record.
So ordered.
My first question is to Dr. McHatton. Doctor, why is it important to have programs and student support services that have a cultural lens to them?
As a Latina myself, who did not have a teacher that looked like me or talked like me until I was in my PhD program, I recognize how important it is to have someone that can serve as a mentor and that understands the cultural heritage and ideals and values that I believe in. I think part of what we really need to ensure is to have opportunities to have our students see people who look like them, as you just read from one of the students that you learned, but more importantly, to think about how does culture, heritage, how does that serve as an entree into content, into helping individuals learn? How does language and being bilingual or trilingual benefit the access of education? So I think there's a lot of items and opportunities that serve to support students in minority-serving institutions in ways that other institutions may not.
Wonderful. Both students mentioned the experience they've had because of the Anna-Pizzi program. How critical are programs like Anna-Pizzi's at ensuring retention and college completion?
I think they're essential. I think one of the things, as a Hispanic-serving institution, what we found is the strong familial roles and the way that we understand the importance of community for our students. We need to attend to that because part of that informs the way that our students take courses. We need to understand that a lot of our students give back by working, by supporting part of their family, taking care of other siblings, those types of things. So we need to think about how do we develop programs that attend to that reality for our students and ensure that we provide them those opportunities.
Well, thank you. I know that over 90% of the students at the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley self-identify as Latino, and the campus is committed to providing educational opportunities that are culturally specific and responsive. Dr. McHatton, as the Vice President responsible for student success, what does it mean to provide support to students?
I think the first thing is that we need to demonstrate all the way from upper administration down to our staff that all of us are together in this mission to make sure that students are successful. We need to think about things like student employment. We know that if students are employed on campus, they're more likely to stay and finish their programs. We need to provide advisors that are able to engage with them. We need to have faculty have the necessary skills to understand their role in connecting with students, especially for those students in the middle. Our high-need students are high-touch with our advisors, but there's a group of students that our faculties connect with on a daily basis, and they're instrumental in making sure that our students are successful. So we have a variety of different programs and opportunities so that we're sure we're addressing the students from multiple points, right? Multiple touch points.
Well, Dr. Manhattan, I wish I had more time with you, but my time has run out, and I yield back, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Guthrie.
Thank you for having this, Madam Chair, and thanks for everybody being here. And this committee, the full committee, has been working together, both sides of the aisle, to try to figure out how do we reach out to more people. We all know there are more jobs with skills than people with skills to fill them, and that's the answer to the income issues that we need to address as a nation, is to get people skilled to move forward. And of course, I kind of grew up in the model where everybody's either expected to go to college or they went to work for Ford. That's the area where I lived. And if you didn't go to college, you could go make a middle-class income at Ford. And I had a professor one time when I was in grad school say that if it's going to be low-skilled or low educational level of attainment required, that's going to go to low-skilled countries, and everything else is going to move to high-skilled. And as manufacturing's moved back to our country, which it has, a lot of the low skills just being automated. I mean, that's kind of what's happened to that. It's not like they're coming back and having massive plants of people working. They're just automating what can be routinely done. But what that's done is opened up a tremendous opportunity for people who can operate the machinery and repair the machinery and program the machinery. And it doesn't take the 4-year degree to do so. And I know it's important that we bring people in. I love Mr. Takano's line of questioning because we have to reach people in however they can be reached, and we have to be open to that. But my kind of concern is how do we, the non-traditional, Dr. DeBoer, you talked about it. I wish every kid could go from 18 to 22 and be in college and, you know, have summers off and do that. But it's just not the reality for people who are trying to get replugged in because maybe their job changed. I mean, their skills are no longer, either they didn't have skills that were required or their skills are no longer as valid. But there's tremendous opportunity. So how do you identify in Virginia? Because we're very similar. Of course, we're a few years ago broke off from you guys. I'm in Kentucky. But we have very similars where we have urban centers and we have urban community colleges, and then we try to serve branches where we try to serve more of our rural area. And so kind of the challenge of the urban-rural, how are you reaching rural Virginia? Because we're trying to, how do we reach rural Kentucky? Because a lot of times the factories aren't there. When I say factories, I mean these are people who program CNC machines. These are highly skilled people who get good wages, can make six figures without a four-year degree if they have these particular skills. So how do you kind of deal with the urban-rural differences in Virginia that we have also as well in Kentucky?
Thank you for the question. There are adults both in rural Kentucky and urban Kentucky. Many of these adults are working, but they're living from paycheck to paycheck, and their entire household is living from paycheck to paycheck. In Virginia, about 40% of our households are one emergency away from being in financial stress. Even though they're working, many of them hate their job, or they want to make more money, or both. So when you look at the traditional academic menu at a university or a community college, what they see is inappropriate because it's a 4-year pathway to an associate degree. They can't give you 4 years. They have rents, they have car payments, they have kids. They can maybe give you 26 weeks because they just got laid off and that's how long their unemployment insurance lasts. So what can we offer in 26 weeks? Perhaps they can give you 6 weeks if we offer it right. And we do know, and your comments I think touched on it, that there are very, very good jobs out there that remain unfilled, that employers want, that do not require a bachelor's degree, but do require something beyond a high school diploma. 12th grade is no longer the finish line, my friends, to have a shot at a middle-class lifestyle. But you don't need a bachelor's degree either. So we have pivoted in Virginia to a much more sincere interest, I think, in helping adults. There are a lot more of them. And if you've been paying attention to our birth rate, there's going to be fewer and fewer and fewer 18-year-olds. There's many more 25 to 45-year-olds that need our help. So we have pivoted to try to do more to help adults, and they are coming to us, enrolling in our short-term training programs. Think of it, they want to have a better life, but they don't necessarily want a degree on their wall, but they want a better W-2 on their wall. And once they get it, what we're starting to see is, what's next? Perhaps now that I have some college benefits in my employer, I might just come back and start working on that associate degree. These are stackable kinds of pathways. They seem to be working very, very well in Virginia. And quite frankly, we've had some help from the state to try to help us lower the entry-level price from $4,000, which was way beyond reach, to about $1,000, and still, according to my testimony and our research, is still a barrier for lots of Kentucky households and Virginia households.
Thank you. Well, I was going to ask another question. My time's expired, so I appreciate it, and I yield back.
Thank you. Ms. Trahan?
That came faster than I thought. I apologize. Thank you so much, all of you, for being with us here today. This testimony is so helpful. You know, I grew up in a working-class family in Lowell, Massachusetts. I attended public schools my whole life, and like you, Chancellor Dubois, I was the first person in my household to graduate from college. In Massachusetts, we're fortunate to have some of the best public schools and institutions in the country. However, high-quality college degree remains far out of reach for too many students, especially students of color and low income. These are students who often work 2 jobs to make ends meet. They need to miss classes to take care of their loved ones. My district houses a number of community colleges, Mount Wachusett, Middlesex, and Northern Essex. They educate and support diverse student populations. These community colleges, they offer flexible class schedules so students can come and learn and achieve at a lower cost. Unlike certain schools that boast the proportion of students that they reject, community colleges take pride in educating the top 100% of students. Because community colleges serve a higher share of underrepresented students of color, yet receive the lowest share of resources to do so, I'm wondering if you have any recommendations on how the federal government could step in to address systemic barriers to equal opportunity and ensure that community colleges are equipped to be engines of economic mobility.
Thank you for the question. For the record, I started my teaching career at North Shore Community College in Massachusetts.
Right outside.
A neighbor of yours. Very good question. Our students, unlike our experiences when we all went to college, they are facing tremendous life difficulties. I think in previous testimony in this committee, you heard about some of those insecurities around food and housing and legal problems. They have financial problems. Almost, when you think about it, insurmountable. So what can we do? Our students they don't need academic advisors, they need social workers. They need life coaches when we meet them on day one. Our students they don't speak college. They don't know how to navigate college. They think of a navigator that works for us that can see a student, says, we need to get you college ready by day one. When a student shows up at August 10th and we're starting classes 2 weeks later, that's a challenge to get that student ready by day one. And the next challenge we have is if we can help that student complete the first 5 attempted courses, their chances of success really soar. 5 out of 5. If it's only 4 out of 5, you can cut their chances in half. 3 out of 5, cut it in half again. 2 out of 5, wasting time and money. You are right. We are dealing with some of the nation's students that have the most difficult life circumstances, and we are simply funded at the lowest levels in higher education. We've become like the higher education emergency room for America, and yet we have to serve our students with essentially a part-time workforce called adjuncts. I don't know of a hospital in the country that would operate with part-time nurses. So we do need help. It is tough work, Congresswoman.
I appreciate that, especially the coaching and the services that are required to keep people on the path to graduation and success. You know, some students at community colleges, they plan to transfer when they're admitted to a four-year institution, or they continue after receiving their associate's degree. But they're faced with, setbacks, whether it's, courses or credits that don't transfer easily. I'm wondering if you have any recommendations on what we can do to take the friction out of the system, to make it easier for students to continue their education. And I say that, I direct the question to Chancellor Dubois, but
Sure,
certainly if anyone else has comment.
I'll be brief. I think one of the things Congress can do in reauthorization is simply to require every state to have a guaranteed transfer apparatus among their community colleges and their public universities. That's a start. We have that in Virginia. We have guaranteed arrangements. They work, but the problem that we're having, Congresswoman, is students typically, they get there, but they need to spend an extra semester because not everything counts.
Right.
Time is the enemy when you look at student success, and it also adds an extra financial burden.
Yep.
So we're working out the kinks, but I think at a very minimum, Congress should require that their state public systems have guaranteed articulation, agreements and alignment.
Thank you. Did anyone else want to comment? Thank you.
I might, one of these things that we find essential, because we have articulation agreements with our local community colleges. To make them effective, what we do is to reach students in the beginning of their community college experience so that they understand the pathways that they have to take, so that what course they would need to take if they were coming to a psychology major at our institution or aspiring to the pharmacy track, to take the right chemistry course. That discussion of those pathways that we do for distinct majors with our neighboring colleges helps students understand and waste less time. And also that it also tells them that they can be part of our community even before they have finished their associate's degree as well. Those connections should be made very early.
Great,
Thank you very much. Mr. Klein.
thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm glad to see Chancellor Dubois here, even if he is from Mass. I went to college in New England, so I went to school with a lot of students from Lowell and suburban Boston. And Chancellor, your roots are strong when it comes to higher education. You have a great experience up there in Massachusetts. I want to praise the work of you and your team, and the Virginia Community College system has done revolutionary work and really made Virginia one of the standout programs in the country when it comes to community colleges. The flexibility that's provided to your institutions to be able to meet the needs of the public, even in rural areas like mine, has been fantastic. The innovation that's going on, you decentralize, so you allow your institutions to meet the needs of your communities. So Virginia Western in Roanoke is meeting needs that might not be happening up in Blue Ridge, focused on agriculture. Dabney Lancaster focused on, it's near the homestead, so you might have some golf course management courses, you might have some dining, catering type courses. It's a fantastic balance, and you're providing that bridge where in Buena Vista, Virginia, a student at Perry McClure High School can take courses at Dabney in HVAC maintenance and repair. And then the companies that have found Buena Vista and located their HVAC manufacturing operations have located in Buena Vista, provided free materials to those courses, to those students. They work on those on building these machines, and then when they graduate, they've got a job waiting for them. They can stay in rural Virginia, raise their family, and reinvigorate the school system, reinvigorate the community. It's a fantastic cooperative effort, and breaking down those transfer barriers between high school and community colleges, 2-year and 4-year degrees, something Virginia's worked very hard to do. I worked to establish the transfer grant program along with Chairman Callahan, worked to set up branch campuses so that they have small entities that kind of are satellite entities in places where they might not have a lot of population. And now we're moving into online courses where we're trying to get even the community colleges, but especially our 4-year institutions, to develop agreements where you can put a lot of courses online to reach those people who have different kinds of schedules. All this innovation is happening in Virginia, and your leadership is to be commended. The one thing I noticed about your testimony, and I just want to repeat it, you mentioned that the typical bachelor's degree graduate leaves Virginia public universities with nearly $30,000 in student debt on average, correct? And in the paragraph prior, if you take your first 2 years at a community college, get your associate's degree, transfer to a 4-year institution in Virginia, 4-year public, finish your bachelor's degree in 2 years, you save more than $50,000 on the price of that bachelor's degree, correct?
That is correct.
Now, I know that's a
If
rare
everything
circumstance.
works perfectly.
Right, and I know that's a rare
correct.
circumstance, but you are providing that solution. We've been sitting here in hearings asking, how do we bring down the cost of a college education? And you're providing the solution. So when I'm confronted with parents who can't get into Virginia Tech's engineering program because its acceptance rate is something like 10, 12%, it's amazingly low, I'm able to provide them with an alternative. Virginia Western has the exact same courses you would take at Tech. You're 50 miles away, and you're going to be able to save the money and transfer to Tech, enjoy those last 2 years at Tech, go Hokies, and then finish with a Tech engineering degree, which is second to none. So I am thrilled with what you're doing. I'm sorry, I used up all my time praising you, but I do want to thank you for all the work, and thank you for being here today. And I if you want to respond to that, you're more than welcome. But
I mean, thank you, Congressman Klein. We're glad you're here. We miss you in the state legislature. Incidentally, sir, for the record, I'm really from Brooklyn, not Massachusetts, but we can, in Virginia, we can guarantee to any father or mother that their child can graduate UVA, William & Mary, Virginia Tech, James Madison University, if they enroll in a community college, graduate from a community college at the prescribed GPA of the university. And it does work. It has some kinks here and there, but it does work. If you can look for ways to leverage the community college, you'll be saving taxpayers a lot of money.
Thank you very much. Mr. Castro.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Mr. Du Bois, I had a question for you. I know you can't speak as a representative of all community colleges, but I spent time in Texas as the Vice Chairman of the Higher Ed Committee for 2 terms. And a lot of the challenges that we had with our community colleges, I think they do a great job with many students that they transfer to 4-year universities. In Texas, at least, those students do better than the students that actually started at 4-year universities, which is a great thing. Yet our community colleges were beset by many challenges. Figuring out developmental education. Developmental education is the graveyard of higher education. Their completion rates, in Texas at least, our completion rates were lower than a lot of high school graduation rates. And so part of my concern over the years is that if somebody makes their decision just based on cost, in other words, going to the cheapest place, they may not necessarily have the best chance of finishing off. And so what is Virginia, what are community colleges doing with articulation agreements with 4-year universities to make sure that folks can transfer with developmental education with all these challenges? How do you assess the improvements that have been made over the years?
Thank you for the question. I think if you look around the nation, increasingly you're going to be finding more and more community colleges moving away from the developmental education because often it is kind of a bridge to nowhere. And instead, we are moving that way in Virginia. Tennessee is already there. Florida is already there. Instead of putting students in college courses for the first semester with co-requisite help along the way, it is difficult work. But the research that I'm looking at now, it's promising to move away from developmental education, direct placement with the help that they need. And I would also add, like in a previous comment, when our students come to us, they need someone that can help them on day one, navigate, get ready, get set, get in the right courses, get their financial aid, get their textbook materials, and then, because they have all of this self-doubt, they really need people to believe in them and to get through those first 5 courses. If we can do that, we're going to help a lot of students.
And Dr. McCadden, I had a question for you. As a Texan here at the panel, I was in the legislature, and we spent a lot of time trying to get a medical school at what was then UT Pan Am, where my wife graduated from school. She's from Alton, Texas, in the Valley. UT RGV is the anchor university for an area that is millions of people, but in many ways had been ignored in terms of its educational resources for decades. And so we also made strong pushes for more doctoral programs, for example. Can you tell me, because I think it's so meaningful to an area that's overwhelmingly Latino there, the progress on all these fronts, a number of doctoral programs, graduate programs, so forth?
So yeah, absolutely. We are thrilled to have the School of Medicine because it has been a real game changer in the region. Over the past couple of years, we have added multiple graduate programs. So we've got the PhD in clinical psychology. We are working on physical therapy. We're looking at a podiatry PhD graduate program. We're also doing some graduate certificates. There's a psychiatric nurse practitioner, mental health nurse practitioner. We've put in graduate programs in sustainable agriculture, teacher leadership, applied behavioral sciences, statistics. We've got several on big data, data analytics. We've got several biomedical in graduate programs, bioethics. So what we're trying to do is really assess what are the needs within the region, and we find that healthcare, the STEM fields, and hospitality, we also have a brand new program in hospitality and tourism, are all fields that are very important in that region. So those are the programs that we've engaged in trying to develop these new.
And how about the graduation rate? You know, I'll give you an example. Probably a dozen years ago at UTSA in San Antonio, the 6-year graduation rate was 32%. Only 32% of people had graduated after 6 years. Where are we on that front?
So we just graduated our first class because we've really only been in business and operation for 4 years. We don't have the data back yet. So our goal is to do at least to start off with at least a 30% 4-year graduation rate. But clearly our goal is to do much more than that. And some of the programs that we have in place, the cap on the tuition, the promise programs, those types of things are all things that are helping us to try and get students through the pipeline in a much more meaningful and timely manner.
Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you. And we now turn to our chair, ranking chair of Education and Labor, Dr. Virginia Fox.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to thank our witnesses for being here today. Dr. Dubois, you talked about the Fast Forward funding program for the students who complete the class and credential, and that it's designed only to pay after the students complete. I assume the legislature set it up this way, and why was it designed this way? And how has that accountability metric been received by community college leaders?
Thank you for the question. We actually proposed the funding formula that way to the state legislature. Most funding formulas, if not all of them, are on the basis of an enrollment. We thought it would be much more attractive to say, no, we're proposing a funding formula that we will receive our funds upon completion. And I think it was irresistible. In fact, in the legislature, we only got 2 no votes. So it went through. So why did we propose it that way? Because we knew by research that when we were doing these things, when students had to pay a lot of money to get in, we knew that their completion rates were north of 90%. Why is that? Because it's not a 4-year pathway. It's 6 weeks or 8 weeks or maybe 16 weeks. So we knew we had a good track record, so why not? Let's propose it as a pay for performance. In fact, our former governor brags that it's the nation's first pay for performance. It was different for our college leaders, so we had to, in fact, our payment in Virginia comes in 2 forms. Complete the program, and then the state gives us an installment of funds. And then when the student gets the certification or license, we get our second installment of support. So that caused us, our leaders, to develop relationships that we didn't have before. For example, with the Department of Motor Vehicles. We don't give the CDL test, they do. So we needed to form these kinds of, align these data relationships so that we could certify that the student completed the program, we knew that, but then completed the exam and get the license or the certification. So it took some changes on our part. Are there some complaints about the funding from our leaders? Sure, but for the most part, it is working. The legislature has incrementally increased the funding for this program every year for the last 3 years, and we still run out of money. That's how huge the demand is among employers. If I might give an illustration, just to drive home the fact.
If you don't mind,
go ahead.
I only have 2 minutes left, and I need to ask some other questions. I'm happy for you to send that to me. Dr. Verret, would you tell me what led you to get those dual enrollment programs off the ground, and have you seen an uptick in enrollment at Xavier as a result? And what are your outcomes for students who take dual enrollment?
Well, our outcome is that they would persist in college and continue in college. The programs are based in our mission, because our mission is not just a accomplishment at Xavier, but we worry as much as students who never go to any college. So our connections with that is a long-standing mission for us. But their going to college, whether they come to Xavier or not, is to us a success, as long as they go to college.
Right. And nobody's mentioned this, but the research shows that students who take one dual enrollment course are 3 times more likely to graduate. And others of you have not emphasized that very much. But this is an area I have a great deal of interest in as working on dual enrollment, because we know it is so successful. I just have one more comment. Dr. Dubois, I have to just take exception to your suggestion that the federal government requires states to have articulation agreements. I really don't see, nowhere is the word education in the Constitution. We ought not to be involved in education at all, but to involve us more to tell the states to do something they're already doing, or most of them are already doing. You've articulated that yourself, and that we know works. I don't understand why the leadership in the states don't understand what you understand. Time is more valuable than money. I mean, you can always replace money. You cannot replace time. And so requiring students to go, who are going to a baccalaureate program, to repeat courses is irresponsible on the part of the educational institutions, and the citizens should be demanding that that not be allowed to happen. Thank you all again very much. I yield back.
Thank you. I now turn to Mr. Sablon.
Thank you very much. Good morning to all our witnesses. Madam Chair, thank you very much for this series of hearings on issues that I hope will lead to a robust Higher Education Act reauthorization, but particularly today's hearing on minority serving institutions is important to me. I, as chair of the other education subcommittee, I was always, it broke my heart, and some of the failures of programs under the Bureau of Indian Education for early childhood, K-12. But Dr. Boham, today your testimony gives me some hope, and I really would like, your testimony states that your college and Oglala Lakota College co-led the nation in preparing and graduating Native American nurses, with more than 90% of your graduates certified as registered nurses and working in local community settings. You also testified that before Oglala Lakota College, or OLC, launched its nursing program, none of the nurses employed by the Indian Health Service to work on the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota were Native. Of the 70 nurses working on the reservation in 2013, 80% were OLC graduates. Congratulations. What can small community colleges like the one I have in the Marianas in my district, what can these colleges with health workforce shortages and high indigenous population learn from Salish Kootenai College success?
Thank you for that question. Part of what we do really well in our nursing program is we create culturally competent healthcare. So we are caring for our own. And you have heard from other witnesses that our communities value, and one of their primary motivators is the opportunity to give back into the community. And I think our nursing programs exemplify that need and concern and wish to give back. Part of what we also do around our nursing program, and we have implemented it college-wide, but particularly in our nursing program where students have high stress, demanding academic requirements and clinical requirements as well, we provide wraparound services as well. So we have early alert systems, and if students are beginning to show stress or look like they might be faltering, the early alert system is accessible from our custodial staff to me. And if we see a student that maybe we're used to seeing every day and we haven't seen them for a day, or they miss a class, we have an electronic system where an actual person goes then to find this individual and make sure everything's okay. And if there are issues, we connect them to services and resources. We know that because nursing is the kind of demanding program it is, that it's really important to have preschool services available for women and young men who are primary caregivers to their children. But I think overall, the big thing is that culturally competent, culturally congruent care. We want to take care of our own.
Dr. Boham, again, you're provided a ray of light. I mean, that it's possible to break this chain in Native or in Native American schools, and I am encouraged. My time is up, so I will submit other questions for the other witnesses, but congratulations is not a word I would use because this is a small step, but I hope it goes not just with your program, but also to other places in our country, like the Northern Marianas, where we have a small community college, and we have a huge need for workforce investment. Madam Chair, thank you very much for today's hearing, and I yield back.
Thank you. Mr. Watkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks to the panel for being here. Every American deserves a chance to seek post-secondary education regardless of the circumstances. I have seen firsthand how the tribal colleges and universities are providing tribal students with the education they need for the future employment of their chosen profession. I'm proud to say that in my district we have Haskell Indian Nations University in Lawrence, Kansas. Haskell is dedicated to building the leadership capacity of the students, providing well-rounded extracurricular and education opportunities. A few months ago, I had the pleasure of speaking with several of the students as they came here to DC. During the discussion, it was clear that the students desired to remain local after graduation and serve their tribes and their communities. To that end, it becomes essential for the tribal college and universities to develop career pathways for their students by expanding partnerships between TCUs and local employers. Dr. Bohm, in your testimony, you mentioned that your tribal college has developed a strong model for workforce development, offering education and development programs that are responsive to local employer needs. Could you please explain the partnership between your college and the local employers that foster this cooperation, speaking specifically to how it's benefited your student post-graduation?
Thank you. First of all, we work with our tribal economic development and organization, and so they do economic development studies once every 5 years and gather through surveys of the membership as well as employers and tribal entities in the community what the projected employment needs are and what areas people are interested in looking for work in. We also partner with our county JSEC, or Job Council, and so we're connected to them, and they're also looking. It consists of employers, and so they come to a meeting once a month, and we talk about what's going on in the economics of the community and what jobs we're needing and what jobs people are phasing out of. But at Salish Kootenai College, because we serve we serve about 70 different tribes at any given time, we have branched our relationships out beyond just our local community for the students that are going to be returning to their communities. And we work with their tribal colleges or with their job development people at the state level for those same kinds of informations and trends. The other thing that we do is we have an extensive internship program on a national level. And so we have to develop a lot of partnerships so that students get that internship opportunity so they know what the work is going to be like. They create those relationships for themselves within those professional arenas. And that's a huge piece. And then we also have developed something similar to our friend here in that we in listening to our employers and looking at what they need, we have built almost all of our 1-year and 2-year programs that are aimed at folks needing to get employment to be in stackable certificates. So they can take a 1-year program, but it's all broken down into pieces. And so if they start and then they need to go to work for a little bit and then come back, they will have a credential that will allow them to stop out and return without losing time, money, and it also provides for those that need to work through their college career. It will allow them a livable wage. Maybe it's an EMT certificate, or it might be a phlebotomy certificate, or it might be a flagging certificate that will allow them to continue to work while they're going to college with a wage that's above minimum wage.
Well, thank you, Doctor. Appreciate it. Madam Chair, I yield back my time.
Thank you. Ms. Bonamici?
Thank you, Chair Davis and Ranking Member Smucker. And with all due respect to Dr. Fox, there is a federal role in education, and it's an important one. Many of the federal laws in education came out of the civil rights era. And as we approach the Higher Education Act reauthorization, I think we need to really honor that by promoting equity and safeguarding the opportunities for everyone to get a higher education. And of course, the HBCUs and minority-serving institutions and community colleges are a really important part of meeting that equity role. And we need to make sure that you all have the resources and the policies to help your students succeed. I want to start by congratulating Dr. McHatton for your university's National Chess Championship, which I understand is twice in a row. I have long been supportive of chess education, especially in the K-12 system, tremendous academic benefits, but I want to say congratulations. That's a big accomplishment. But I want to start with Dr. Dubois. Thank you for your testimony today, talking about your Virginia's community college system. I'm also a community college graduate. I went on after my great 2-year legal assistant program to get a bachelor's degree and a law degree, both at the University of Oregon. So I know firsthand the critical role that community colleges play in opening doors of opportunity, because they open doors of opportunity for me. In my home state of Oregon, the community colleges typically serve large populations of students of color, low-income students. They're doing some innovative work, but challenges remain, especially the resource challenge and the obstacles encountered by students that deter completion. A couple of those you mentioned in your testimony: homelessness and food insecurity. And I saw your story about the student who couldn't concentrate, and he went in to speak to the professor and ended up staring at the granola bar on his desk because he hadn't eaten for 2 days. So can you talk a little bit about how your colleges are addressing homelessness and food insecurity, and also importantly what the federal government can do to help with that area?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Admittedly, these student insecurities are becoming much more of the dialogue of the day with community college leaders. I mean, who would have thought that we have students that occasionally have to live in a car or going hungry? I mean, so what are some of the things that we're doing? We're not doing enough. We now have food pantries at all of our community colleges, but we can't food pantry ourselves out of this. We need faculty and staff that know how to help someone who's eligible for SNAP sign up for SNAP. The Pell is critical for these students. They also need actually more help than that, because
Right.
Pell will cover the mandatory cost to attend. But these students are facing all these other kinds of difficulties. So we're doing everything from asking the philanthropic community to step up. The best philanthropic dollar, I think, that we can raise now is for student emergency funds. And students don't have just one emergency. So we're doing all that we can with the resources that we have, Congresswoman, but we run out of those resources very, very quickly.
Thank you. And I'm going to try to get another question in, but I appreciate your response, and I'm certainly making sure that we are funding SNAP and Pell Grants is critical. Dr. Verret, thank you so much for being here. I read your impressive background. I'm the founder and co-chair of the Congressional STEAM Caucus, where we advocate for integrating arts and design into STEM fields. Because number one, it helps students become more creative and innovative, and number two, it reaches more students, especially as students are going through the K-12 system. I've toured, we have nationally recognized STEAM elementary schools that are really engaging students and helping them to be creative. So I wanted to talk about how, I know you have 70% of Xavier's student body is female. And I'm excited. I'm also on the science committee. We're always talking about getting more women into science, technology, engineering, math. I call STEAM. So how do you create a campus environment that encourages your female students to pursue those careers that are typically male-dominated?
Well, if I would use a line from St. Francis of Assisi, that if you are preaching, preach by example. The examples that we have before them are on the faculty, women faculty who are in leadership, who are researchers, who are scientists, who are engaged. That has been there at Xavier. I'll remind you that Xavier was the first Catholic college or university that allowed women and men to attend classes together. It did not exist, except that Catherine Drexel pushed it. So in many ways, the sisters who founded us were feminists before the word was coined. But the other piece is that we have now women on leadership, and what embraces all of our students is a culture of expectations. We expect students to rise high, to reach high, and we show them that it's possible because others have done it before them. It also even applies to what we are seeing as an emerging crisis on the other side, that we are seeing a dearth of young males who are succeeding from K through 12 and who are acceding to college as well. And we have initiatives as well to reach out to them as well.
Terrific.
But the idea, everyone succeeds
time is
together.
expired. Thank you so much. I yield back.
Thank you. Mr. Grothman.
Yeah, my question is first question for Mr. Verret. I don't know if I have that right. Looked at your background, very impressive. And again, congratulations on all you're doing at Xavier. I noticed prior to being at Xavier, you also had an executive position at Savannah State University. A couple hearings ago, I can take it or leave it, but a couple hearings ago, we had a hearing based on the idea that we had to have more federal involvement because we had too many schools that were too segregated, and the implication being that schools that were too much of one racial background or the other was a real problem. Now we have a situation here in which we're calling for more money for historically black colleges. And you've done a tremendous job. I have no problem with putting more money in historical black colleges. The only thing is I kind of wonder here, we're getting mixed messages on this committee, whether it's really, really important to weigh in and make sure every high school is more segregated, or and given your background and the success you've had at Savannah State and Xavier, I wondered if you'd care to comment on that issue.
The first thing I would say is that the historically black colleges were never segregated except by law. That even at Xavier in the 30s and 40s, we had students who were African, who were white at Xavier, who could not receive their degree legally in Louisiana. Therefore, their degree was awarded by Villanova. So we were always open to we have students who are not African Americans at Xavier who are with us, and they have been with us before. But what I would say is that these HBCUs have been engines of bringing African Americans into the creative workforce for this country, and also of engines of social mobility, and they continue to produce. The country needs that talent, because remember that our talent base is what we cultivate in this country. What is happening in the TCUs, also in the Hispanic colleges as well, is about creating talent for this country. These schools, when we overproduce, punch above our weight in educating students who become doctors, lawyers, policymakers in all the fields that the country needs. That's what we do. Investing in these is not an individual benefit for these students. It's a benefit for their communities and for their regions.
No, I'm not denying that you're doing a tremendous job. I'm just wondering on the larger issue, if you had a comment.
What I'm saying is that it's important that our students engage with students of all ethnicities, and they do. Our students are in our communities. They work in hospitals, and in our communities, they are interned throughout our communities. Students from Tulane and Loyola engage with our students as well. So our students actually are very well integrated, and others are welcome to us as well.
Thank you.
And that's always happened.
Thank you. I think all of you at some point or other in your testimony talked about poverty and the importance of lifting people out of poverty. And I wondered if you had any comments, having dealt with so many people who, at least by the federal definition of poverty, are in poverty, if there anything you notice about those families compared to other family units, that sort of thing, and if you're doing anything to make sure that the next generation or the generation that you touch, that their children don't wind up in poverty. Yes, Mr. Verret.
If I may say, what we have seen, not only in recent history, but also in the decades and almost century that we've been, that our students, when they receive a degree, it is not something that benefits them alone. It touches their families. What we see is that suddenly the nephews are coming to college. The sons, we are opening new doors. The benefit, there's a cascading effect that we see. So what we are seeing is that they do not return to poverty, but what they do, they lift communities out of poverty.
Okay, do any of the others, you have any observations on what type of situation the federal government defines as a family in poverty, and what you will do to make sure that the next generation does not wind up in poverty? Did you make any observations as to that?
Very quickly, the best thing I think we can do is help an individual get a post-secondary credential. And
Are there no observations you have as to the type of, you said you deal with your students, the type of family situation that results in something being referred to as poverty? You don't know, your mind is a blank.
No, we have poverty in our rural areas, and we have poverty in our inner cities. The best that we can do is help them get a post-secondary credential, because 12th grade is no longer the finish line.
Thank you, Mr. Grothman. Your time is up. Ms. Adams?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you to the ranking member as well, and thank you for your testimony. You know, where you start out in life doesn't have to determine where you're going to end up or just how far you can go. I grew up in poverty myself, poor black girl growing up in Newark, New Jersey. But education is a pathway to greater opportunity. Most of you may know that my background in terms of historically black colleges and universities are particularly important to me. I just said I taught on a campus at Bennett College in Greensboro for 40 years. I'm a two-time graduate of an HBCU, North Carolina A&T. And one of the first things I did when I got here was to put together the bipartisan HBCU caucus with my colleague and now my co-chair, Bradley Byrne. We've got 88 members, and some of them have been here today. We've accomplished a lot for our HBCUs, but as has been already revealed today, Dr. Verret, thank you very much for being here and all that you're doing to make Xavier University our premier HBCU for graduating black doctors. I mean, if you look at the statistics, and to my colleagues, while we only make up 3% of all colleges and universities, HBCUs are producing 17% of all bachelor's degrees that are earned by African-American students, 24% of all STEM graduates. So we have been producers. We've had little, but we've done much. Dr. Verret, what is unique about the HBCU campus environment that attracts students?
I'd say, first of all, is a culture of expectation. We expect them to succeed, and expectation students rise to that. We have a faculty that will embrace students and recognize that what they need individually, we will address. We do that.
Okay.
The other piece that is crucial is that we have the example of those who have come before them, which is important to them as well. But the expectation piece is what I would call the secret sauce in the element, because when students come to us, many of them may not have the education that they deserve, and students do not choose the schools they go to. So whatever gaps they may have, we meet them in their first year and help them repair. And what is amazing, what happens at the end.
Yes, sir, I know. You filled some gaps for me. What sort of specific strategies do you use in creating program and degree offerings that meet the job market demand? We've talked a lot about job market demand here.
Well, the HBCUs have been, first of all, we educate our students very broadly, which gives them a lot of flexibility. Some of them go on to many levels and change and readapt their jobs as they have to. But what they do have is they have learned to work hard and on complex matters at HBCUs, and they become masters of their fields. But I also want to thank you for starting the HBCU caucus. That has been a very important way of getting our voice here.
Great, thank you, and thank you for your participation. What strategies could Congress pursue to make your job easier?
I'll begin the first one because affordability is a challenge for us. We have our students who are Pell eligible in the lower 2/5 of the socioeconomic income distribution ladder. Those students, a small crisis in their families can lead to students not persisting, and that we do see. Pell is crucial to us. Pell is crucial to the HBCU community because we have 50% or more on most of our campus of students are Pell eligible. And that is the major struggle for us. Helping our students pay for college is an important piece. Pell is something that we cannot tell you more how important it is, and that we want to see you do more for us.
Absolutely. Could you elaborate on how or whether your local workforce boards or chamber is assisting in that regard in terms of aligning your programs with future workforce needs?
They do, and also we engage with them and also in creating internships so that our students get to sample and practice while they're there. With our economic development agencies and also with our chambers of commerce, we work closely to create internships for our students. So our students very often while in their second or third year, have practical experiences, whether in the laboratories or whether it's in clinical or other workforce settings.
All right, thank you very much. I just want to end with a comment that I always like to remember by W.E.B. Du Bois, who said, of all of the civil rights for which the world has struggled and fought for 500 years, the right to learn is undoubtedly the most fundamental. Thank you all for believing in that right, and thank you all for being here today. Madam Chair, I yield back.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Levin.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Well, thank you all so much for being here. I want to ask you about the situation of students when they come to you. Dr. Du Bois, when I was running the Michigan workforce system some years ago, something like 60% of students coming to community colleges nationally needed to start with remedial education of some kind. Is that still the case?
Yes, sir, in mathematics, typically.
And so can you talk to us about your connection in Virginia with the whole adult education system for people who, because I know many of your students aren't coming straight from high school, and what we should do to better connect adult basic education with community college. My observation is that the systems are generally completely disconnected. Often ABE is conducted in the K-12 education system. Very rarely is the instruction offered contextualized for a career pathway for a person. So I'd appreciate your comments on that. And I'm very curious about what the situation is in HBCUs too, Dr. Verret. So I'd like, afterwards, I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Thank you for the question. In Virginia, the adult basic education world is essentially a K-12 sector responsibility. Having said that, though, a number of superintendents have kind of subcontracted that out with their community colleges. I do believe that adults need to go to adult places. And this is my editorial. Many of these adults, they come to us because they want a job. They want a better job.
That's right.
And we should be putting more of them into a contextualized, applied, short-term pathway to get to that job. Once they get that job, I think they'll raise the bar and move on with higher educational goals. But I agree with your preface that these pathways should be contextualized, applied in a vocational career area.
Dr. Verret?
Well, I would agree with my colleague as well. But I would also say that one of the remedial issue that you point to is the fact that many of our students do not get the pre-collegiate preparation that they need. And I would extend it beyond mathematics, because what we found out is that actually language arts are more of a barrier to mathematics and also to physics and to chemistry and everything, and to history as well. So that we have students who are getting degrees, who may have high GPAs, but that the ACTs and the SATs don't seem to match. That is one of the crimes that is occurring in many ways, that we're not getting the right teachers. And I would speak for the investment into K through 12 as well, as to make our work much more doable. Being able to actually resource teachers, because I do think great teachers really matter. And we have not investing in our teaching profession, especially in the K through 12 field. And that's as essential as anything else this country could need.
Well, in other countries, teachers are, people say lawyer, doctor, engineer, accountant, teacher, and we pay our teachers in this country much less than other professionals. We don't invest in them properly.
And our investment in educating teachers is because of, not only it's for a mission, but we know that the work of building society is educating great teachers and getting them into our classrooms is crucial. We don't get away by skipping that.
But let me just say, we know what needs to be done here, don't we? I mean, for example, if someone is learning English and they come really for a job, for a career, so they can support their family, if we teach them Dick and Jane ran up the hill, they're going to stop coming. If we find out, well, they could be an X-ray tech, or they should be a CNC operator, and if we start teaching them their basic skills tied to a career pathway, they come back, right? And in that adult context, as you say. So can someone give me some, I mean, I ran the Michigan workforce system from 2007 to early 2011. Are we making any progress here in this regard nationally?
Just quickly, I think in Virginia, we're making our progress through our Fast Forward programs, where we are simply an adult that needs help and to get some training. We don't require the GED to be a welder. You need some basic reading skills to be a truck driver. Not necessarily, you don't necessarily have to have a high school diploma or equivalent. So we have moved into more and more into that direction, helping adults secure employment through short-term training programs.
Thank you. Mr. Trone, you're next.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman Davis, and Ranking Member Smucker for holding this hearing. And thank you to our witnesses. We know that community colleges and historically black colleges and universities and other minority-serving institutions play a key role in providing college opportunities for low-income students and students of color. We also know that while these institutions are doing the most work to close that achievement gap and advance economic mobility, they're severely under-resourced. It's great to see the committee coming together in a bipartisan way to prioritize and address this issue, and I look forward to working with all of you on this. Madam Chairwoman, I'd like to enter into the record this report by the United Negro College Fund, which is led by my close friend Michael Lomax, who actually was the MC when I was sworn into Congress at our event just recently, and entitled The HBCUs Make America Strong, the Positive Impact of Historically Black Colleges and Universities.
So ordered.
Thank you. The 2017 report found that the total economic impact in the U.S. is $14.8 billion annually, the equivalent of ranking among the top 200 corporations on the Fortune 500 list. In Maryland, we have 4 HBCUs that generate $1 billion in economic output and 10,000 jobs. A Maryland graduate can expect to make $1 million more a year due to that credential. So, Dr. Verret, If we strengthen federal investments at HBCUs, what do you see, what's it look like on long-term ROI by making this investment look like? What's the return on that investment?
The return on investment is huge because right now it is critical that we develop our talent. The talent that we have to build our new industries, whether it's the digital industries, it's the high-tech industries, and also our creative industries, whether it's the movie industry, et cetera, is from these young people. That talent that we leave on the table underserves us because other countries I know are doing a good job of educating their talent, and they're not willing to share it.
Right, so we're building our diversity with better ways and different ways to look at the problems and challenges we have.
The creative minds that we have on the table and in our second and third grades should not be wasted.
Absolutely. Dr. Dubois, I know you have extensive experience in both community college systems and the criminal justice space. A top priority of mine is criminal justice reform. I believe the impact of education on these individuals that have been incarcerated, society as a whole, is crucial. Research from RAND Corporation found that incarcerated individuals participated in education while in the correctional institution decreased recidivism 43%. How do we best strengthen and expand high-quality education opportunities for justice-impacted individuals, and what would that impact on this be?
Thank you for the question. In the mid-90s, I taught in Attica State Prison, a maximum security prison, with Genesee Community College. So it's something I'm very familiar with. The research is clear. Most prisoners are going to be released within 3 years, 90-something%. What do we want them armed with? A future? And if we do, it's going to be some kind of an educational credential because the recidivism rates have been clear for 25 years. At one time, the federal government was supporting prisoners through Pell. I think we have one college that participated in an experimental program with Pell. We would welcome the opportunity to receive more Pell support for incarcerated students.
Have you seen a state that's done a best case job in this area? Sometimes I hear Alabama, but do you know, anybody know of a state that's really worked with community colleges and correctional institutions hand in hand to help address this disaster?
In the 90s, it was New York. Of the 30 community colleges in New York, we probably had about 14 or 15 of them very involved in inmate higher education. There was a lot of research that was done back in those days. I can certainly make that available to you.
How do we help students in Virginia with their mental health disabilities? How do we get more money focused on that? What should we be doing to help you there?
That's a great question. I mean, we are struggling with that question just as we speak. It was only just 2 weeks ago where I announced a major task force on this very, very issue of student insecurities, including mental health, financial problems, legal problems. These are the students that are coming to us today. We need answers, more and more answers to that kind of a situation.
Thank you. Mr. Timmons.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and thank you each for coming to testify before this subcommittee. I'm going to begin. Dr. Verret, Xavier University of Louisiana has created an emergency fund to cover unanticipated student expenses. How were you able to establish this grant funding, and what have the results been for students who end up needing this unexpected money?
Well, the emergency fund was founded 4 years ago when I arrived, and it was first funded by through alumni, our alumni, and also other friends of Xavier who are not alumni. Some members of the board, others have contributed to this fund. We have raised these funds because we're aware that there are students who are in good academic standing, especially as they are in their third or fourth year about to finish, who are at risk of not persisting. It may be from tuition funding, but it also may be other things, for example, clothing, a crisis at home, medical crises, and we apply that. It's small because we are not a rich institution and we do need more, but it parallels what my friends have been speaking about, other needs, including housing needs, because we do give housing scholarships for homeless students. In fact, we've received the calls from homeless shelters that you have a student here. Do you know about this? And we have ways of responding. We need to respond. So we need resources to meet those needs.
Thank you. Do you have a ballpark of how much has been put into the fund, or the average?
The average year, we've had somewhere around between 100 and 200,000 in the fund.
Thank you. Also, Dr. Verret, you note in your written remarks that a challenge for many students of color is their preparedness for college-level coursework. What are you doing to increase student retention at Xavier, particularly for those students who may struggle in their first year?
I would say it's not only for students of color, but it clearly affects our urban students especially. But what happens is that what we have is in first year, our diagnostics, our early alert program would tell our students in their early first semester that there are needs. They are brought to our students academic support. They're given academic support and make sure that the individualized tutoring that they need in certain areas is provided. We have, remember, Xavier is not a selective institution. We have students from 18 to 34 on the SATs. Those students who are in greater need, we are seeing progress because last year we saw, especially among the group with greater pre-collegiate challenges, that their retention numbers have gone up significantly.
Do you think that this program could be modeled for other HBCUs?
It could be modeled for almost any other institution.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Boham, you mentioned a TCU Innovation Corps initiative to help entrepreneurs put their ideas into action. What are the goals behind this initiative? How do you anticipate the program will work? And what are the expected results for students and local economies? Dr. Boham. Oh, sorry, I'll give you the question again. You mentioned a TCU Innovation Corps initiative to help entrepreneurs put their ideas into action. What are the goals behind this initiative? How do you anticipate the program will work? And what are the expected results for students and local economies?
The TCU Innovation Corps, I-Corps, is built around the concept that in the research and work that students are doing with particularly science programs, that they would find marketable patent programs that could then be scaled up and marketed to build the economy through creating new jobs and new enterprises.
Thank you. I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you. Ms. Wild.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and thank you to the panel for being here to speak today on this very important subject. I will tell you, I am not a member of this subcommittee, but I came to hear what I could of your testimony and have read your testimonies because I feel that this is such an important area for us to cover in this committee. I am a representative from the 7th District of Pennsylvania, the Lehigh Valley of Pennsylvania, Allentown, Bethlehem, Easton area, where we have a wealth of institutions of higher learning. We have several very fine private four-year colleges. We have a smaller parochial private college. We have a state school. But the pride and joy of our community are two incredibly good community colleges, Lehigh Carbon Community College and Northampton County, or Northampton Community College. These two schools in my district are such high quality. They offer a range of academic and career training programs. The statistics on those two schools is that after graduation from the two-year programs, 93 to 94% of their alumni are either continuing their education or in a career. And I think that's a statistic to be so incredibly proud of. And both also serve a large population of students of color. Lehigh Carbon Community College is a Hispanic serving institution. Northampton Community College is the #1 associate degree granting college in Pennsylvania for Latinos. So if I seem like I'm bursting with pride, I am a little bit about those two schools. Having said that, I've visited both of those schools since I was elected, and I have learned from their administration about some of the challenges that the administration faces, because in the face of constant decreases in funding, these kinds of schools, not just these two in my district, but these kinds of schools across the country that are struggling so much to keep from raising tuition for their students, and by and large are doing a pretty good job of it. but that money has to be taken from somewhere. And so what I'm consistently hearing from them is that the schools are contracting the services that they provide to students. And that too is a real harm to the students. And I'd like you, perhaps Dr. McHatton, to address, well, first, let me go to Dr. Verret and ask you about how student outcomes vary depending on what institutions are able to spend on the instruction and the student support systems.
I don't have a thorough study in front of me that I can refer you to, but in my experience in fact, I should mention I was in Luzerne County, so I know the other LCCC, Luzerne County Community College, quite well. But what I would say that the resource that we need to meet the needs of students where they are, take time, it takes faculty. For example, our faculty, we have very few adjuncts, except a few professor of practice.
That's
so we have
impressive.
full-time faculty who are engaged with students even in their introductory classes. That devotion is important for our students. It costs. And if you reduce those, if you were to reduce those services at Xavier, our outcomes would suffer. We know that. So it is important that when we speak of remedial or other needs, call it other, but meeting students with the course that they need or the support structure that they need to persist in the subsequent courses rather than throwing them into deep water without knowing how to swim. That's criminal. What we need, those resources are crucial. As we reduce those in the community colleges and any college around the country, the outcomes will suffer.
And some of the things that I was told, and that all of you may also have seen, is that there's a greater need for things such as childcare on these campuses. There's a need, both of the schools as well as some of the four-year schools in my district have food support programs, food banks. And then, of course, there's the issue of attracting and retaining good talent in the academic force. So I commend you for being able to keep full-time professors as opposed to relying solely on adjunct personnel. I wanted to ask if I could, Dr. Boham, because I'm very interested in your testimony about the working with local industry partners and to ensure that students are on a pathway to good jobs. And if you could just, in the very short period of time I've left you, give us a little bit more information about how you make those connections with local industry.
We do that in a very face-to-face kind of hands-on way with our business partners. But and a good example of that was one of the studies that we did said that we needed people in our hospitals that were certified medical assistants instead of the on-the-job training assistants that they had had before. They were changing their practice, which a lot of medical fields are doing, changing the scope and role of particular jobs. And so we implemented a certified medical assisting program that would meet the needs of those hospitals statewide, because it's two different providers, and they're regional, so they're not, it's not just Montana. But
thank you very much, Dr. Boham.
Sorry, it was my fault. I left you with very little time, but thank you for your input.
Thank you. Ms. Omar.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Thank you all for being here today to have this important discussion. I have a staffer who made the choice to attend a community college. He then went on to a four-year university and eventually got a graduate degree in an Ivy League school. While that is the kind of stories that we would love to hear, not many have the opportunity of having that kind of progress achieved. Some of our students are getting stuck in community colleges. After 6 years in college, 4 in 10 students still haven't earned a degree. And that as a nation, we've barely made any progress in increasing college graduation rates over the past 2 decades. And we know that underfunded colleges with low graduation rates disproportionately enroll students of color and low-income students. Community colleges that are less selective or open access receive less state funding and charge lower tuition. And affordability remains a challenge, even at college with relatively low tuition costs. The full cost of college includes textbooks, supplies, living expenses, costs which are similar to colleges. Many students are low income are working adults who face instability in jobs, who have family demands, who have emergency expenses. All of community college students nationwide, 40% are first-generation college students. Among community college students, 22% were both food and housing insecure during the last year, and 80% experienced both of those challenges as well as homelessness. To all of you, I would love for you to share how your institutions are helping some of these students move through these challenges so that they can attain graduation.
Thank you for the question. Your description is certainly very accurate. We are challenged with students that are facing the most difficult life circumstances, and we are funded at the lowest rate of any public sector of higher education. So it is fiscally a challenge. We also are under pressure to not raise tuition, and yet we have to. And we try to do that in a very modest and careful way. What we're doing in Virginia is we're trying to, whatever extra dollar that we have, we want to invest it in student services. We think that that's the best bang for that dollar to help students be successful. Our students need coaching from day one. They need guidance. They need navigators. They need social workers. They need people who understand where the resources are in the community and put those students in touch with those resources.
Can you, yeah. I can't see your names. Yeah, do you want to take that?
McHatton. Yes, so I think
if we can be mindful of the time, if you can.
Sure. Along with some of the things that have already been discussed, I think what's really important as far as our institution is building capacity within our faculty, so they're able to stay connected and identify students early on when they're in need of particular support services. Developing a summer bridge program to prepare students who are first-generation students and maybe might have some academic needs has been very successful. We've also had some peer-led team learning and supplemental instruction, so there's a lot of support, academic support, throughout their first year and beyond in order to help them with any academic needs that they may have.
Thank you. And Dr. Verret, if I can just have you follow that up with maybe recommendations that you would have for us to implement in helping close this gap.
I would begin, it's about finding students in crises, especially throughout. First year is crucial, but other years as well. The early alert and how we use early alert is important for us because it's important that professors and instructors be able to identify a student who's actually not appearing in class, a student who's coming in very tired for another reason, and to give a shout out to the early alert system, to the people in student life to say, you need to pull this young person in because we think something is going on. To look to see whether a student whose grades or who's not performing in their first exam, to pull them in. All those are indicators that something is going on. You may not know what it is, but to get someone competent to engage with that student at that point and to build a structure that's necessary, whether it is housing, whether it could be food, it could be other things that another crisis occurred, the student was injured in some way. Yeah. We need to find out.
I appreciate that. Education is the greatest equalizer, but we also have to first equalize the situation so young people are able to attain that education. Thank you so much, and I yield back.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Hayes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And again, thank you for allowing me to wave onto this committee, because this, as well, is not my committee. And I've been listening, and Dr. Verret, I can blame you for this today, because generally my staff gets so upset because we spend so much time working and preparing for these hearings, and I have these beautifully put together binders, and then I hear something and I throw all of this away because I am so personally invested in the work that this committee does. You know, I went to a community college, and what I heard today was you talking about your thoughts about K-12 education. And it reminded me of an experience that I think would be tremendously relevant here. And during my time, I was a high school history teacher, 15 years in the classroom. I taught African American history, and I had so many students who had never even heard of an HBCU. So I created a unit on it, in Connecticut. In many of the southern states, it's a part of the community, it's a part of the culture. There are so many kids who are outside of this network who, until someone teaches them about it, and that, coupled with the fact that I also recognize in my time as National Teacher of the Year, I traveled to over 40 states, saw something that I thought was a Connecticut problem, but it's a national problem, and it is diversifying the educator workforce and the number of teachers of color who are out there. And I happen to know that HBCUs produce more teachers of color than any other teacher preparation institutions. So I guess my question to you would be, do you have any thoughts on how we expand this network, broaden the spectrum so that you're not just having this conversation with young people in Louisiana who might be thinking about entering the profession, but also kids in Connecticut or...
What I would say is that we do need to resource and support teachers because we want them, because we have students who are going to education, who have high loans, high costs, who eventually have a family and they have to make a decision to leave the profession. We don't want that, especially if they are good teachers. We need programs that support teachers because they are our most precious commodity. For example, there's an example at the NSF, National Science Foundation, of the Noyce Grant, which came out from the lack of STEM educators, where we would actually provide tuition support for students who commit to teaching for the next 5 to 6 years after that. And many of those teachers remain in the teaching profession. We need for other disciplines as well, whether it's social studies, whether it's special educators. We have to actually provide a way of even loan forgiveness for that. Because I do say the work that we do at our colleges, whether it's community colleges or HBCUs, is only made easier by having students who come in with the basic, fundamental, good K-12 education that they deserve.
Thank you, but again, I don't think it's just about the money. I appreciate you saying that because that's very important, but we cannot underscore the fact that just the capacity building. I went through a community college, undergraduate, a master's program, and a graduate program where I was the only African American in an educator preparation program in the state of Connecticut. Well, not in my state, but in my program. We're an education state, and I was the only person of color through my academic journey.
And the capacity building is a recruitment issue. For example, what we do in recruiting educators is beginning to speak even in high school with students who might consider becoming teachers. We have to do real outreach the same way we have done in STEM in the last decade as we needed that. We have to do that. We also have to think well about the capacity of the HBCUs that are producing a lot of numbers of teachers in the support of their schools of education. I can speak for Xavier what we are doing, but also I do know other HBCUs that have schools of education. They need support to build their capacities as well.
Thank you. And Dr. Boham, I noticed that your campus is majority female, and most of them are over 25 years of age. I know that a congresswoman from my state just recently introduced a bill to provide childcare, which I know is a challenge. I went back to community college as an adult with a child as a single parent. Can you talk about what types of support this specific population needs to succeed and how we could help here in Congress?
Childcare and quality childcare that you can take your children to and know that they're going to be safe and well cared for is critical for our female and male students. We have a number of fathers that are primary caregivers as well. And so we have on our campus a preschool, and that is critical, but we also need quality after-school programs so that parents can focus on their schoolwork and not be worrying about the safety of their children. We also know that children that are in preschool and that go into kindergarten are going to have larger vocabularies and be better prepared, and that preparation will follow them through their entire K-12 education. When I was working in the K-12 system, literally a third of the Native students that were defined in special ed between K-3 were there for language. And it wasn't that they were actually special ed, it was the number of vocabulary words that they had. And so these programs are critical.
Thank you very much. I now turn to Mr. Bobby Scott, who is the chairman of the overall Education and Labor Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Ranking Member. Dr. Dubois, it's good to see you, and I want to congratulate you on your success at the Virginia Community College system, particularly in the success you've had in the short-term programs that don't necessarily lead to a degree, but lead to a good job. There's a consensus, a growing consensus, that we ought to allow Pell Grants to help finance these short-term programs, but there's a lot of concern that we want to make sure they only go to quality programs. Can you say a word about what elements there are in your program that we should look at as we evaluate whether or not a program is of such quality we want to allow Pell Grants to help fund it?
Thank you, Congressman Scott. I could suggest to you there should be two elements in some kind of an accountability system. One is program completion, and two is employment in a high-demand, family-sustaining wage job.
Now, how do you work with local businesses to make sure that there will be a demand for your graduates?
So to receive any kind of state funding in Virginia, first of all, we have to have demonstrated demand. That has to be, that information and data needs to be collected by our local community college. It needs to be verified by my senior staff, and the state board has essentially granted me the authority to certify that program as eligible for some state funds or not. And then the truth is really in the pudding when we look at job placement rates, which are very, very, very high. And when we see the job placement rates, and we will at some point, how many pharmacy technicians will we need in Virginia? When we see those placement rates starting to come down, we will probably turn off the state support for those programs, because we only want them to be in high demand. They differ region by region, but the colleges do a very good job, as demonstrated by job placement, that we have an accountable system.
Yeah, how do your programs differ in rural Virginia as opposed to urban Virginia?
It's interesting, in Virginia, we have 2 million people in rural Virginia and 6 million plus people in urban, in the other part of Virginia. 40% of our fast-forward credentials are now being earned in rural Virginia. The only difference I would suggest to you, the big one, is the jobs that are in demand in certain regions, let's say Southwest, South Side, are different from the jobs that are in demand, Congressman Scott, in your region. For example, in Grundy, they're not really crying out for a lot of welders. But your major employer, that CEO goes to sleep at night and wakes up worrying about where can he find welders to build aircraft carriers and submarines. So we look at these regional differences, and we pay a lot of respect to those regional differences to see we're not a kind of a franchise where we have the same menu across the board at 23 different community colleges.
Thank you. Dr. Verret, Xavier has an outstanding reputation of producing minority medical doctors. Can you explain how you have that success, what you do to create that success?
Well, it begins first, I think, with the intentionality of our advising as students arrive. In their first year, we begin to prepare them for the pathway that they're headed to, what courses they need, what experiences they need to have, and even how to prepare for the interviews and preparing their essays. They think about that. The other piece is also there's a curriculum that is very well set in mind by with our faculty. The faculty, there's a great commitment to how that curriculum is delivered, and to make sure that these students are actually at the top of their games even when they take the medical entrance exams. So it is faculty, it is also the advising.
Is that replicable? Can you replicate it?
It is replicable because we have had not only a number of HBCUs, but also a number of other colleges, PWIs, universities that visit Xavier to see what we do. What is not easily replicable overnight is a faculty that is a faculty culture and a campus culture. That piece where faculty replicates itself when they hire people and choose new members of the faculty, there's a criteria of exactly can they deliver for our students. That piece is very intentional, and we seek to retain that.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I want to now recognize the ranking member for his closing remarks.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for scheduling this hearing. I thought it was an outstanding hearing. I'd like to thank each of the witnesses for taking your time to join us today to talk about higher ed reauthorization, to talk about the impact that your schools are having. I'd like to commend you, not only again for being here, but for the great work that you do educating students and really helping them have the opportunity to achieve that success, to climb that ladder of economic success. You know, we heard so many good things coming from the schools, the physician assistants and the physician programs at Xavier, STEM development at UTRGV, Virginia Community College. You talked about the Fast Forward program, that short-term skill programming, the nursing program at SKC, and that was just a little bit of what you talked about. Certainly, you know, I'm glad you had the opportunity to highlight some of these excellent programs here today. You know, one of the things that we can do is promote excellence when we see it, and I hope that you're able to share those best practices and other institutions can learn from the leadership that you're providing and the work that you're doing. I know the federal government can also do more to help these students and help the MSIs and community colleges serve, not only help students not only access higher education, but persevere to completion and succeed in the workforce. And so as we're considering reauthorization, we can talk about earn and learn programs, workforce Pell funding, more flexibility in spending for institutions and spending those funds, and increased collaboration between institutions and local employers. So I look forward to continuing this conversation. We're certainly not all born into the same environment, but that difference of initial circumstance should not mean that we shouldn't all have an equal opportunity to succeed. That's really the promise, excuse me, the promise of America. So I think it's really important. The work that we're doing on this reauthorization is very important. It's important that we get it right so that all students can achieve a better life for them and their families. So again, thank you for the work that you do. And I'd like to, again, thank the ranking member.
Thank you, and I want to thank our ranking member for those comments as well. And thank all of you, because you've brought some very important information. We know historically that the students you serve have not really had full access to our education system. And so it's important that we move forward from today, and certainly as the work that you have been doing, and Chancellor, for many, many, many years, we appreciate that, by offering culturally relevant programming that recognizes, you know, how important identity is, how community and tradition, the HBCUs, TCUs, and HSIs, you not only educate students, but empower them to be the next generation of leaders in their community. And that's why it matters. That's why it's important to all of us that these opportunities are available, not just to the students, because we need them. We need them for our future, and so we all have to buy into that notion and know that it's not helpful when we shortchange your institutions, when you're serving, in many cases, the most vulnerable students. And you know, I think what's interesting about the multiple challenges that they face is that you are helping them where they are, and acknowledging that you have to be adaptive in your programming, and to be able to truly move with the time and what we need as a country. We've talked about so many of the programs, the models that you've brought, and part of, I think, what we're trying to grapple with here is how to make them work right, how to scale them, and how to be certain that they are open and that they are exceptional, that they are prestigious
for young people, and that everybody leaves feeling that they have great value in the time that they've spent. Not that it's been time that has been wasted in any way, as I think Dr. Verret mentioned, and so often we find that. So I want to thank you very much for that. Congress really can't expect institutions to continue disproportionately serving vulnerable students while simultaneously fighting to receive the vital funding from federal, state, and local governments that they need. So we have to continue, as we work to reauthorize the Higher Education Act, commit to supporting these institutions that are really resource-strapped, but on the front lines of our effort to provide Americans with equal access to higher education. Thank you very much. And I now want to ask for consent to enter into the record a statement from the California State University of Los Angeles highlighting the best practices CSU-LA uses to serve the Latino community. We appreciate your being here, and there's no further business. The committee stands adjourned. Thank you very much.